All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Before we start, we can't ignore the current events happening in our own backyard in Kenosha, where a number of our EWL members call home. Today's program celebrates the diversity of our EWL members and the power that comes from speaking your truth and having your voice be heard. Tempo, Milwaukee, and EWL are committed to using our powerful voice of over 650 professional women for change, not just talk, but real change. As you listen to the stories today, please think about how you can individually and collectively as leaders continue to use our voices and our privilege to listen, learn, and stand against inequality of any kind. So good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amy Clark. I'm a member of our programming committee and a supply manager at Molson Coors Beverage Company. Today, I'll be hosting with my friend, Kelsey Otero. On behalf of the EWL Programming Committee, we want to welcome all of our emerging women leaders and guests. We're thrilled you could join us today. Backed by popular demand is our EWL Speaker Blitz, where 6 of our very own EWL members will speak for 5 minutes each. A recent survey indicated our members wanted to hear more from this group about ways to build confidence, find positivity during uncertainty, and uncovering inner strength when it seems impossible. And I think this group has delivered. Before we dive in, we have some housekeeping to take care of. I'd like to take a moment to recognize our EWL supporting sponsors, Baird and Reinhardt. For a special shout out to my employer, our event sponsor for this afternoon, Molson Coors Beverage Company. MCBC generously provided our first ever speaker 6-pack, each beverage unique and chosen by one of our speakers. So let's find out who chose what. So Kaitlin picked Crispin Rosé. Some of you may have our Prosecco or our Brut option, all of which are gluten-free. Ebony, not much of a beer drinker, selected her husband's favorite, Red's Apple Ale. Betsy chose the classic that hasn't changed since 1903, Miller High Life. Jessi selected Leinenkugel's Berry Weiss, which pairs perfectly with chocolate if you happen to have some on hand. Megan chose a summer classic, Blue Moon. And Mallory chose one of my personal favorites, our new hard seltzer with antioxidant vitamin C, Vizzy. So cheers, everyone. I hope you enjoy. All right, so let's switch gears back to our speaker blitz. If you haven't noticed so far, this go around is a little bit different than previous events. We ask that you please mute your microphone and turn on your camera if you'd like. The chat function is available, so please cheer for our speakers. However, if you have questions specifically for our speakers, please message Kelsey directly. Any questions we don't get to, we'll send follow-up afterwards and when we send out the recording in today's presentation. Now I'll pass things over to Kelsey to introduce our first speaker.
Thanks, Amy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kelsey Otero, and I am honored to be your MC for today. And I have the privilege of welcoming to our virtual stage our 6 speakers and introducing the 5 different talks that you'll hear. As Amy mentioned, today's talks are a little bit different than some of our EWL speaker blitzes that we've done in the past. This time around, we're going to explore the theme of truth talks. So all of the talks will focus on vulnerability and inner strength. And I think our speakers today do a really nice job of what it truly means to be an EWL woman in the Milwaukee community, facing tough issues and doing it in a way with utmost strength and courage. Since we're on the virtual stage today, I want to reiterate what Amy said. Please make sure you keep your microphones off, but that doesn't mean that you can't cheer for and support our amazing speakers today. I'd like to encourage you to use the chat to show solidarity, share some of the things that have worked for you as it relates to some of their talks, and to connect with some of the other women here. However, if you do have a question, and I hope you have questions for our speakers, I want to encourage you to send them directly to me so that they rise to the top and we can make sure that they get addressed. We heard from so many members of EWL during the beer pickup that Amy mentioned that we did on Tuesday. about how this is one of the first events that they attended or is one of their favorite EWL events that they attend every single year. And so I thank you all for joining us today. And if you are new to EWL or are a guest, I hope you find these talks beneficial, and we'd love to welcome you to this amazing community of women that we have here in Milwaukee. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Kaitlin Vaughn. Kaitlin is, not only does she have an incredibly relevant topic for today's climate and what we're going through in the workforce, I think she has advice that many of you will be able to take to heart now or in the future. But Kaitlin is also a member of our EWL programming committee, and so we could not think of anyone better to kick us off today. So Kaitlin, I'll turn it over to you if you want to share your screen, and we're looking forward to hearing your talk.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kelsey. Can I just do a quick check? Can everyone see my screen all right? Perfect. Well, it is my pleasure to present to all of you today. My name is Kaitlin Vaughn. I'm our talent management consultant and corporate trainee program manager at Quad. And today I'm here to talk about conducting difficult conversations with compassion, specifically as it relates to some of the really challenging job actions that we have to go through as leaders in the Milwaukee area during this pandemic. I'd like to introduce you to my team. So as the corporate trainee program manager at Quad, I oversee our young professionals. They go through a rotational based program for the first 2 or 3 years that they are at Quad, and I help oversee all of their rotations and their career paths throughout that time. And as I look at these pictures, I look at them actually with a little bit of sadness in my heart. As you can see in the upper left-hand corner, when I look at my team, that picture was taken at the end of February. And little did we know what we were about to embark upon then. About 2 weeks after that picture was taken, we all ended up having to work remote due to COVID. And within 5 business days, about 85% of that team was furloughed. I was really sad. I was mad. I was scared as their leader. And I quickly realized that this wasn't about me. It was about all of them. And as their manager, as their leader, I had to step up, be brave, and really lead this team through a time of heavy uncertainty. I'm constantly reminded during this time about this, event-driven change that's been pushed upon us. And I think about a quote from John Cotter, in which he says, "The higher rate of urgency does not imply ever-present panic, anxiety, or fear, but rather it means a state in which our complacency is virtually absent." And like many of your organizations, what that means for my organization is we had to make some changes. Some of those furloughs ended up becoming more permanent, and quickly I had learned that I'd have to permanently lay off about 20% of my team. So what did I do? I took this framework in mind, and usually you'd probably see ready, aim, go, but I've kind of twisted that a little bit, put it on its head. And what I did was I made sure that I was truly ready to have these challenging conversations. Then you have to rip off the Band-Aid, do it. And then lastly, you have to aim. You have to help your team aim into the future and make sure that your team continues to strive towards success. So the first thing that I did was try to make sure that I was very confident with my decision making. Which of those 20% would not make sense for us to move forward? If I looked into our future in my organization, what were the skills and the strengths that we needed to be successful and bring success through the other side of this pandemic? This was a metric that I had used based off of conversations that I had with mentors, as well as some research that I had done. The internet can be a great thing for those matters. But secondly, as I was preparing, I realized I had to be direct in my conversations with the folks who would be let go, and also compassionate. And in order to do this, I knew that I had to understand the process. I had never gone through a layoff before, nor had I ever conducted one. So I had talked with a lot of my HR colleagues to really understand, what the process was going to be like. We wrote a script. I edited that script over and over again to try to bring in a little bit of myself. And then I practiced like you wouldn't believe, to the point where it's almost memorized, right? I feel like being prepared really helps. Then unfortunately the time comes. And although I mentioned before that these decisions are not about you, you do have to make sure you take care of yourself. I learned this the hard way. I ended up having a 2-day migraine going through these. I don't think you can underestimate the emotional and physical impact some of these conversations may have on you. So I'd recommend to stay hydrated, well-fed, breathe, meditate, practice yoga. Make sure that you take some breaks between some of these job actions so you can stand up, walk around, get a breath, and don't overschedule your day. You really want to keep your focus on these individuals. And lastly, it's super important to lead your team into the future. Help them aim, see what they're working towards, and gather around a cause. Make sure that you give your team some space. They'll need to grieve, but make sure you also then share that go forward plan and over communicate. Unfortunately, this is the reality of the situation that many of us have to live through at this time. But I hope with some of these tips and tools, you may feel better prepared should you have to have these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaitlin. That was just incredibly informative. And I know a few people in our committee and others that knew about your talk had said that this is something that they've either been in recently, a similar situation, or would likely be needing this type of advice in the future. So I think a lot of us will find it incredibly beneficial and helpful. I want to remind you all that if you have questions for Kaitlin, send them to me directly right now so that I can make sure they rise to the top. And I see people using the chat, which I love, to show some appreciation for Kaitlin and her words of wisdom. I also want to remind you all that we are going to be sending out to all of these presentations afterwards, and this is recorded. So if you didn't have a chance to take copious notes on Kaitlin's advice and want to reference it later, you will have the ability to do so. So Kaitlin, one of our first questions that came in, I'm hoping you can address. You mentioned in your talk that you did some research as you were preparing. Mm-hmm. Can you talk, the question is, can you talk specifically about what resources you found particularly helpful?
Absolutely. So I'm a member of the Society of Human Resources Management, or SHRM. They have an incredible plethora of materials that are really helpful for HR professionals. If you don't have access to those tools, I also found a lot of great research, even in Harvard Business Review and other resources like that. And don't be afraid to reach out to your human resources team. Many of them have gone through similar challenges before, and with my experience, everyone was extremely helpful to give me some of their advice.
That's great, thanks. We had another question come in quick. Can you talk a little bit about where you are as a team right now? Is there an update since this all happened?
Absolutely. So I'm actually really excited because we've been turning a corner. So all of my team members are currently back from furlough and have been for about 4 weeks. We also usually bring on a lot of a new start group throughout the summer. We pushed back the start group, but I'm happy to say that we were still able to bring on 9 new employees. And so they just joined us this week. And it feels like a breath of fresh air as we continue to turn this corner and work towards our cohesiveness as a group.
Oh, that's amazing to hear. One more question for you that's come in. What did you learn about yourself during this process that surprised you?
I think for me, I can be very emotional. It's very difficult for me to actually hide my tears. So that was something that I had to practice, and I realized that I could still deliver compassion without expressing emotion. And I think that's really important when having these conversations, because you are making a real life-changing event for these people. And the last thing they need is to try to comfort the one who's giving them that message, right? It's a moment where you really have to step up, be brave, and try to keep some of that emotion to yourself.
Well, one thing I've noticed just in following the chat here is it seems like this is something that a lot of people have been facing or may need to in the future. And so, like I said earlier, I think there's a lot of appreciation for the advice that you shared. And I know you mentioned when we were doing some practices that you'd be more than happy and you would actually love to connect with other EWLers that want to talk about this more. So I think we're going to wrap up our questions for you right now, but I do want to encourage everyone, if they want to talk to Kaitlin about this more, send her a message, send her an email. She
Please.
is more than welcome to, and I would encourage you to do that. That's part of what this EWL network is a great support for.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to help. Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kaitlin. So we're going to move on to our next speaker. We got a jam-packed afternoon for you all. And so our next speaker is Ebony Lewis, and I have the utmost honor and privilege of introducing her. Ebony is going to talk a little bit about how trauma needs more candor and conversation, which is incredibly relevant right now. And I applaud and advance her authenticity, and I just appreciate her courage of sharing her story with all of us. And I can't wait for you to hear more about what Ebony has to share. So Ebony, I'll give you a second to share your screen. And then whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right, thank you for that, Kelsey. Good evening to my EWL sisters and all the wonderful guests that are joining us this evening. I really appreciate you all being here. As Kelsey said, my name is Ebony Lewis, and I am a program director for the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Milwaukee by day. And when I'm not doing that, I am a mother, I'm a wife, I'm an author, a youth warrior, and mental health advocate. And I'm here to present on trauma, tragedy, triumph, the healing of a generation. So, trauma. Trauma compromises our ability to engage with others by replacing patterns of connection with patterns of protection. A global pandemic, death, loss, social inequality, public murders, fear, anxiety. Right now, we all are experiencing trauma in some way, shape, or form. In a matter of days, we immediately had to shift and adjust our lives, and it became pretty uncomfortable. We shifted to a sense of protection. We're now every day working to protect ourselves, our families, our children, and this nation. Justice for Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Jacob Blake. When I think of my own story, I think of Robert Haynes, my father, AKA my Superman. See, Robert was a bright young kid who had a very bright future ahead. However, he experienced an immense amount of trauma and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in his early teens, something I didn't learn about until I was 25. But he never received the proper care, which leads me to tragedy. What mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, more unashamed conversations about illnesses that affects not only individuals, but their families as well. The tragedy that exists is that we don't talk about mental health nearly as much as we should. So what happened to my Superman? In late October of 2012, he attempted suicide by strangulation, which led to a stroke on both sides of his brain. I became his legal guardian and watched as my Superman literally came back to life before my eyes. This small clip highlights his first few words after 2 months of recovery. This is the beginning of triumph.
Hang on the mistletoe, I'm gonna get to know you better this Christmas. And as we trim the tree, how much fun it's gonna be together this Christmas. The fireside is blazing bright, with caroling through the night, and Christmas will be a very special Christmas for me. Said this Christmas will be a very special Christmas for me. Yeah. Bum, 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 bum. Hey.
If I've learned anything about trauma and tragedy, it's that on the other side is triumph, always. When we choose to heal, we don't just do so for ourselves, but we do so for all of those connected to us. Trauma creates change you don't choose. Healing is about creating change you do choose. So, what did my journey to healing look like? I'm still on it. But on this journey, I've cried, I've prayed, I've written, I sought therapy, traveled, I've loved, I was open, vulnerable, and always willing to share my journey with others. And then tragedy hit again. Because you see, trauma and tragedy are ever happening. And so we have to equip ourselves with tools to be prepared. In 2016, I got the call that a cousin of mine, my father's nephew, had died by suicide. And I knew that in order for the next generation that I was raising to heal, I had way more work to do. So on a plane to Houston, I wrote a love letter to my cousin, to my father, and it went something like this. Dear Black boy, it's okay to cry. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to feel. That's how you know you're human. That's how you know you're real. In 2016, I didn't imagine this love letter would one day become a book, a love letter to not only my family, but to the nation and to a generation eager to heal. Dear Black Boy, It's Okay to Cry is a children's book that tears down the myths, breaks the stigmas, and reaffirms what our boys, men, and we as a people need to achieve emotional and mental wellness. And so here's to rewriting my Superman story. Here's to taking trauma and tragedy and turning it into triumph. Here's to ensuring that my children have an enhanced experience in life. And here's to you, to your family, to your children, to your friends, and to your community. Here's to your healing. And when the tears are gone, remember to always stand strong. Dear, insert your name here. Be brave, be bold, and confident in who you were designed to be. Joy is the sound of your new song. Thank you for your time. Here's my contact information. Definitely would love to stay in contact with you all.
Ebony, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think I speak for everyone on this call that there's probably not a dry eye here. You are incredibly inspiring, and I just appreciate your wisdom and vulnerability that you shared with all of us today. One question I want to start out with, because you mentioned the book and I see everyone typing it in. Where is the best place to buy the book that supports you or supports a Black-owned business or someone that you care about?
The best place will be my website, which is dearblackboycry.com. I will put it in the chat as well. That way I can sign it and send it. So that's the best way I like, because it is directly to me, and then I'm able to sign and personalize copies. There are a few local spots that have it, but I'd have to like double check to ensure they have them. And then I recently got someone reached out to me that's a retailer for the airport about putting my book there. So once it's there, I will let you all know.
Awesome. Well, we are all about supporting you. So I want to encourage everyone to go to Ebony's website and purchase a book for other people that you know. And she just dropped it in the chat. So thank you. Another question that came in, you are incredibly busy. How in the world did you carve out time to write a book on top of everything else that you're doing?
It took some time. It took 3 years. So started in 2016 as a simple like letter for my own healing. But in 2018, I was a part of the African American Leadership Program. And with that, I got a life coach who really helped me prioritize things that I was doing for myself. As a very busy woman, a wife, a mom, I tend to do things for everyone else and ignore myself. And so she gave me this tip that I had to create meetings with my book. So I wasn't creating a meeting with myself. I was creating the meeting with the book. So I thought, you know, when that meeting popped up, it was like, oh, I got to go to this meeting. And then I get to Barnes and Noble and be like, oh, I'm here to write the book. And so it really allowed me to make time for me that I didn't necessarily equate as me time. I equated it as time for the book because I realized at that time how important the message was.
Ooh, awesome advice. I love that. I think a lot of us could use it. Kind of a follow-up to that, how did you care for yourself during this entire process, both of writing the book and caring for your dad and making sure that you were also caring for yourself?
Well, one, I'm a very spiritual person, so my religion, my faith has gotten me through. But then also therapy. I was always, believe it or not, the stigma of therapy really pierced me personally because of my family's mental health history. I was afraid that if I went to therapy, that somehow I would be associated with certain things. But then I realized quickly that, as I said, my dad's healing and my healing was connected to the healing of my unborn children at the time and all of those things. So therapy. But, you know, just doing those small things, like whatever it is for you to take that time to set it aside and care for yourself. I was pregnant when I really got into the thick of things, which I thought would slow me down, but it actually was more motivation to keep going.
Aw. Another question came in that I really love, and it's, if you could have one wish come true, what would it be?
Ooh. If I could have one wish come true, it would be for my father to have received the care that he deserved earlier, so that my son could know the man that I knew. That would be my wish. But I say that to say, hopefully we will make strides with mental health so that those in the future will have that care so that they don't have to experience the same thing that my family did.
I love that. Thank you, everyone. Please, again, give a virtual round of applause to Ebony for sharing her story, pass on her book, spread the word. I want to welcome to, again, our virtual stage, our next speaker, Betsy Radue. Betsy's going to tackle the really challenging, difficult topic of balance. I know balance is something we talk a lot about in EWL, and I feel like a broken record here. I keep saying this topic is more relevant now than ever before, but I would have to agree with that statement again. And so, Betsy, I'm going to invite you to share your screen and invite everyone to hear a little bit about how Betsy wants to reframe for us how we think about balance.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? This is fun. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for having me today. It's a true pleasure. And I very much, it's two tough acts to follow. I mean, you women are incredible. So thank you very much. I'm here today to talk about balance and my belief that permanent balance, work-life balance at least, is not real. And by embracing a couple of key areas, you can find a more sustainable, approachable way on your way to your chosen success. So my name is Betsy Radue. Professionally, I'm the digital marketing director at Stella & Chewy's Pet Food, an incredibly fast-growing company in Wisconsin where our mission is to help pets thrive. Passionately involved in Milwaukee, like all of you. I'm a new mom and a wife, and I'm also a recovering perfectionist, self-admitted. So why me? This is a snapshot of my life events over the last 2 years. It's been filled with big, nonstop, big stuff. I pushed to balance all at once. I also read just about every self-help business book during this time as a fun fact. So that's me. So this is the current state of where many of us are right now with juggling work and our quote unquote lives. A July Monster.com survey reported that 2/3 of employees are experiencing burnout, and that's up 20% since May. So that's pretty scary. Work continues to be omnipresent. The latest Zoom report just detailed over 300 million Zoom participants daily. I know me and my team can definitely relate to that. Arguably, one positive development is that for many, work-life integration has become more real, authentic, and vulnerable. So we come to the balance of work and life. It's most commonly shown as a scale or a teeter-totter where you go back and forth from one to the other frequently. To choose one, you have to give up the other. The reality of this model is you go from getting really, really conditioned to straight burnout like this poor woman that's sweating in heels, which I, can definitely relate to. I found a better way to look at balance. It's depicted here as a shot of my beautiful baby girl visiting Schoolhouse Beach earlier this week. This is one of 5 smooth stone beaches in the world, so on Wisconsin. The stones represent different pieces of your life that vary of importance. It's important to note that these stones or priorities will differ in size at any given season of your life. It's also important to note that this model is open to restack during those different seasons and sometimes even daily. Here's my current stones. Right now, my husband and daughter are my big stone almost every day. That said, I knock these down almost every day and rebuild, and there are definitely days where my husband is helping more than others because work becomes a bigger stone. Again, my team can relate to this lately. The other note here is that I realize that I cannot build onto those other stones if I don't have a permanent and foundational stone, and that's myself. This truly starts with you. A large part of self-awareness is being vulnerable enough to experience improvement. You can't talk about vulnerability without featuring Brene Brown, who's the premier vulnerability and shame expert. Brene reminds us that this quest for perfection we tend to fall back on is detrimental to our happiness and ultimately gets in the way of building our stones. For me, I learned the hard way that perfection and perfect work-life balance were not the way. I've been a dedicated workaholic and perfectionist for most of my career. It pains me now to tell you that I even worked during most of my maternity leave, and when I returned, I hit the ground running really, really hard. In my head, I could be the same person I was, a fully dedicated super mom all at once every single day. I really thought I had it all figured out. Now, this Instagram, just after my daughter Grace was born, you see on the left there, I punched it out there on the right for you as well. What you don't see is the 50 plus photos I take to get one individual really cute photo to get these. Also, what you don't see is the condition my daughter was diagnosed with when she was born, a very visible but treatable vascular condition that can be resolved with the right plan or with patience, something I'm truly not known for. I felt shame, hopelessness, fear, you name it. What would her life be like if people looked at her differently? I worried about her future and with me as her mother. On May 15th at 3 o'clock in the morning, I broke. I was 3 weeks back from my maternity leave. I worked multiple 12-hour days. I even put my first Mother's Day on hold because I needed to perfect a presentation for our board. I had absolutely no boundaries. It was also International Vascular Birthmark Day, and I was feeding my daughter in the middle of the night, and I finally put it out there. In this post, right here, I told my social world the tip of what was personal to my husband and I. What happened was what would be my most engaged post of 2020. Remember, I'm a digital marketer, so I look at engagement, right? Floods of messages, calls, texts of support and enlightenment for how many parents have struggled with these very same things, and some from Tempo and EWL, so thank you. It provided me with the kick of strength I needed. If I didn't let go of this quest for perfection, the one person I cared the most about wouldn't have the strength that she needed. What you see now is that I'm no longer hiding our baby girl. Our baby girl is a symbol for the true beauty despite her quote unquote imperfections. This break from perfection and acceptance of beautiful reality allows me the flexibility to stack whatever life has in store for me on my base. I decided to set clearer boundaries at work and not engage so deeply in personal perfection. Becoming a mom was a lonelier experience than I ever expected. My personal community and friend network is very important to me. However, motherhood intersecting with a pandemic meant many facets of my sphere simply were not available. Rather than processing this as nobody cared about our growing family, we decided through a lot of work that everyone is dealing with an unprecedented situation, along with fear, uncertainty that comes with that. Allowing grace for our network gives the opportunity to practice gratitude for any interaction that we can have. Maximizing your community and finding your individual sweet spot for involvement will energize you and fulfill that need for interaction. I love this quote. As I said before, it starts with you. If you want to be big in this world, you need to get right with yourself. Build that strength and share that with others. So balance is baloney. There are days, weeks, quote unquote seasons where certain things are more important than others. You can have it all, but you can't do it all at once. You must choose yourself first, determine what you think is important and set those boundaries. My boss knows exactly where I stand on this, and we're kicking even more butt as a business and as a team. Embrace community. Give yourself and others grace. There is always time for kindness. Give, and give. It will return. Be present in the moment and focus. Turning off my email alerts at night and when I want to be most productive has been an absolute game changer. More importantly, take care of your mind. Mental health care is my new passion. We quite simply need to find a better way. I personally invest my passions as non-negotiables. So thank you, Helium Hot Yoga, my punching bag, and music. I love to rock out by myself and with my daughter. Practice gratitude. Every book and experience comes back to this. Sometimes life is hard, but for us as we sit in privilege, and as Pink says, I can think of 1,000 places much worse than this. Finally, this is a journey. Peaks and valleys just come with a gig. So thank you very much for your time. You know, if you want to connect with me, I look forward to it. There's my LinkedIn and my newly refined Instagram. And I also, as a little bonus, made a little playlist for every one of you that's linked from my Instagram that I really hope you take in, because it's definitely helped me get to a better place. So thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. And I would say, let's see if we can drop that playlist link in the chat and take a screenshot of it so that you guys have something empowering to listen to whenever you need it. Thank you again, Betsy, for sharing that. I want to just take a minute and acknowledge one of the things you said that was so important was a community. And I am loving everyone that is typing things into the chat. It just makes me so proud to be part of this community, and that you and our other speakers today are kind of opening up their hearts and sharing things, and everyone is responding in such a supportive way. So please keep it coming. That is so incredibly encouraging. I want to jump in. We've got a few questions come in, so I want to jump to those pretty quickly. How did you have a conversation with your boss when you were first talking about some of the things that were going on with your daughter? And do you have any advice for someone that is not close to their boss?
Yeah, it's a tremendous question. I would say it was less about a conversation and more about behaviors and building trust, right? So the one thing I didn't mention was I was new to my job. I was only at my job for about 3 months before I went out on maternity leave. So I was actually pregnant when I accepted the job, which is another challenge for some people I've noticed at times. But I did my best to build trust in a way that I could demonstrate that I could give value to the business, and even more so when I was at my best. And at my best, it was these things. I had a quick chat with him about boundaries, because he's a great guy and likes to text at all hours of the night sometimes. And I was like, that's just not going to work for me very well if you could. And it was a good kind of back and forth. But the biggest thing I learned from it was, we're responsible for the behavior that we model. And if I was becoming this perfectionist workaholic, working at all hours, my team would see that and they would then in turn do that. And I don't think that's fair to them. And I would hope that anyone on my team, I think I know us pretty well, knows that and isn't burning themselves out. So that was kind of a big motivator for me. And it kind of helped with my boss as well, was just, understanding that we're modeling bigger and better things for anyone that's reporting to us or through us. So, yeah.
So this is a fun one. Question we had come in. Is there a story behind the boots on your mantle? Because we'd love to hear.
What are these? I don't even know. I mean, this is no. I'm actually on vacation right now, so the boots are something that live up here. It's a very Western themed area, but I guess I would say the story is probably the boots are made for walking, and one of these days these boots are going to walk all over you. I'd probably be my response to that, but yeah, there's not a big story. Sorry.
So where are you on vacation right now?
I'm up in Door County, the best place to be.
Love that. Okay, so besides going to Door County, how else do you invest in your groundstone?
Yeah, it's great. I love that. Thank you. Yeah, a little bit of things I mentioned before. It took a long time for me to kind of trust my body back after having a baby, which is the thing you learn afterwards. Nobody can tell you that. You have to have it happen and have weird stuff happen. But I do love fitness. I love Helium Hot Yoga. Everybody should do it. They have online classes now. I love them. I also like to punch things out sometimes. So we have a punching bag and we have a treadmill. But music really. So the playlist I put together, I think everybody would really, really enjoy. I sometimes go for drives and just listen to it and breathe. But yeah, I mean, I have a wonderful family. I think spending time with family and friends is a really great way to get back into myself and feel like myself. I derive energy from people, which is, again, hard during a pandemic. So any opportunities I have to be with friends and with family really help me build the foundation and feel good again.
Well, you're giving me, and I think everyone on this call, a lot of energy, so I appreciate that. Last question that came in, is there a stone that you had to toss aside as you were kind of figuring out how to create more balance and build your bottom stones up stronger?
Yeah, I agree. Yes. Going back to that community, I had to toss aside some friends that had been with me for a really long time that I didn't see this. We didn't have the same life path going on, and friends and loyalty is really important to me. And that was probably one of the hardest things I had to do. But they weren't matching up with what my husband and I, the path we were on. And it made room for more friends, and it made room for the right people and spending my time in the right way, which is great. But I got to tell you, anybody that's derives passion from friends, it's not easy to say no and to say goodbye to people in your life when they're just not matching up. And, you know, you're hopeful that they come back into your life in a different season, of course, but sometimes you just gotta let some people go. And that was the stone to throw away.
Oh, gotta love the honesty. Thank you for that. Betsy, thank you so much. I think this was the talk everyone needed to hear right at this time. Make sure you add Betsy's playlist to your Spotify list whenever you need some inspiration, and please connect with her outside of this Speaker Blitz call, because I know she wants to be able to share more wisdom and trade some best practices with you all. So now we're going to move on to our fourth speaker, and I have to say this talk particularly hit home for me. I lost my mom a few years ago, and recently helped a coworker through the loss of her mom. And so grief is something that I've struggled and recognized that we just don't really talk about in the workplace. And Megan and Jessi, I am so glad that you had the courage to put this forth as a topic. I think it's incredibly relevant and something that we need to talk about quite a bit more. I also want to recognize before we get going that grief doesn't just have to occur with the loss of a loved one. Grief could be experienced because we've moved away, we've had loss of health, loss of a job, some other significant change in our life. I believe deeply that grief is the price we pay because we loved someone or something, and we definitely need to be talking about this more. And so Megan and Jessi, I also want to acknowledge that this is our first two-person EWL Speaker Blitz talk ever. And so I want to invite you guys now to share your screen, and then whenever you are ready, please take it away. They're going to be talking about Death Becomes Her, addressing grief in the workplace.
Thank you so much. I'm sharing my screen, so hopefully you all can see that. I'm not sure if you can see us because we are doing the two-person thing today, but regardless, we'll get it going.
Hi, I'm Jessi. This is a picture of me, even if you can't see me, and this is my dad.
And I'm Megan, and that's a picture of me and my sister. And we wanted to start this by saying, if you are missing somebody today, we feel you, we hear you, and we love you. We're also here to find new recruits for the Dead Dad Club. No, you guys, I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. We had to add a dry humor in there. It's a heavy topic. We're trying to make it a little bit lighter. We want to make you more comfortable with it. So hopefully we can have a few laughs together today, and we'll take it easy on you. And if you want to join the club, let me know. No, I'm still kidding, you guys. Jessi, take it away.
I'm going to run through this slide, and then the upcoming slides on the left side is going to be about the individual experiencing grief. I'm going to go through that, and the right side is going to be Megan, and that's going to be grief in the workplace and how to handle that as a leader or a colleague. So grief is horrible, it sucks, and we have to normalize it in the workplace because grief is a lifetime. It is, like Kelsey was saying, it's love forever. And it changes a person physically. I think a lot of people don't know that or don't even realize it when it's happening. Me specifically, I had panic attacks, I had insomnia. I'm still taking medication that is, I'm so grateful for, that's helping with the way my body has changed physically since my dad died a year and a half ago. It's important to note that COVID-19 specific grieving requires more flexibility with ourselves and in the workplace because we're all getting used to it, and it means different things like Kelsey mentioned. It means just a different environment. It might not be that someone you know died. It's the biggest one to me, I think, is grief from racism, what's happening in the community, murder from racism, and the trauma involved in that requires a lot more flexibility and kindness from ourselves if we're experiencing it, and in the workplace. So just keeping an eye on that as leaders so that we can actually change the culture around grief. So my dad died on a Wednesday, and I worked remotely just to get out of bed the next couple of weekdays and then on the weekend. And I don't normally work on the weekends if I don't have to. And I ended up not wanting to take PTO or my leave because I didn't know what I would need that for or how grief was going to affect me. So I read up on my benefits and then had an honest conversation with my boss about the work that I was doing. And he agreed with me and was flexible that I shouldn't take PTO or use my leave, save that for, you know, whatever's going to be happening in the future, because grief isn't just up until the funeral and then done. I know that not everybody has that flexibility, so it's really important, again, for us to be the people who are changing this culture together, to be flexible and work with the individuals in our workplace.
And I'm about to make half y'all feel real attacked right now, but as a person giving support, don't ask what happened. It's totally natural to want to know why somebody passed, especially if it was before their time. My father died at 51, my sister died at 30. The curiosity is natural, but we're nixing that question from here on out. What we want to do instead is show support through action, because that speaks a hell of a lot louder than words. If it's available to you to drop off dinner for somebody or send flowers or send a card, those little gestures go such a long way. And in the workplace, showing up for a colleague or someone on your team with empathy and support and patience and flexibility is key.
When Megan and I were working on this presentation, a couple of times, which was not something that happened to her normally, but she said that a hummingbird would come outside of the window while we were working on this. And that was the thing that we found meaning in, or that was comforting, because working on this brought up grief and things for us. But it's also important to know that you might not find meaning, or you might have days or moments where you don't find meaning and you're just sad, and that's okay. Know where you're putting your energy, say no to people. That is very freeing, and especially people who aren't giving energy to you or giving to you. The best time to get a therapist is when you don't even need one. There's assistance and resources, financial resources and options available, so feel free to reach out because we have a bunch of them. And then when you don't know what the next right thing is to do, just have a glass of water and just eat a little bit and go for a walk and take a shower, and just until you know what the next right thing is to do. Yes, that's a Frozen 2 reference.
I absolutely love the therapy theme that we're finding today, everyone. So aside from not asking anyone what happened ever, we're also going to remember that everybody grieves differently, right? It depends on the situation. It might depend on who you lost. Losing my dad versus sister, very different experiences. And it's not like how they portray labor in the movies, right? Like it doesn't happen that way, and it doesn't happen the same way for anybody. And the way you experience it certainly isn't going to be the way I experience it. So just be understanding of that. And then if you're uncomfortable with this topic, which, like, unfortunate spoiler for you all, death is inevitable. And for some, it's as uncomfortable as it is inevitable. So now's the time to start getting comfortable with it, because it's going to help you in the long run. But maybe more importantly, it's going to help you be a better support system for people who are experiencing it in the here and now, because it is kind of a topic we don't really want to run out the door and talk to people about dying. But it's going to come up, and why not be prepared for it? So lastly, we have some resources. I know Jessi already mentioned a few. There are a ton of accounts dedicated to grief and healing on Instagram. A lot of us live on Instagram nowadays, and there's a lot of really, really helpful and comforting things there. Of course, books. And then there's a lot of in-person or maybe right now virtual groups that go on. It might be circumstantial depending on the death, but the dinner party is national. There is a Milwaukee chapter on it, and it's for people in their 20s and 30s experiencing grief, and they have dinner and they talk about being sad and they talk about all the things that come along with losing somebody. They are currently looking for dinner hosts in the Milwaukee area, so if you're interested, we can talk more about that together. And then lastly, I want to say grief can be an extremely isolating experience. And if you're going through it right now, please give me a call, give Jessi a call. We can walk, we can talk. I will share my 6-pack sponsored by Molson Coors with you, and we can talk about it, because nobody should have to do this alone, and we're here. We're here for you.
Thank you.
And then we had to add a funny meme because it's a heavy topic.
Megan and Jessi, thank you so much. And I want to echo what a lot of people said. I just appreciated the humor that you brought to this topic. Made it a little bit lighter for all of us. We had some questions come in that I want to jump to. First one is, should I attend the service or funeral for a loved one of my coworkers? What's appropriate?
That's a really good question, one that Jessi and I have actually talked about together. Both of us at our loved ones' services had people show up that we were like, oh my God, like so-and-so showed up. And it meant a lot because they were filling the room with love. And if you're there and you're comfortable and you are truly, your intentions are good and you are there to support that person, absolutely show up. Unless it's like, it's going to be a small, intimate service, fill up that room with love.
Okay, another question that came in. What can I do or say to a coworker when they first return to the office to make it easier for them? Should I leave them alone? Should I say something, bring something? Any thoughts and advice around that?
That's a good question.
Well, I think, oh, go ahead, Jessi.
And I was just going to say, I'm like, I think it's important for everybody to know that even if you have best intentions and someone does not respond to what you say in the way that you hoped, that doesn't mean you shouldn't keep trying, because there's different ways that people want to be approached. But I think, and let me know if this is different, but I felt like I had the plague when I came back to work. People kind of double taked and walked past me really quickly. I went back to work pretty quickly because I just needed to. That was for me. I think the most important thing, or the most meaningful thing for me, was when someone just said, hi, made eye contact, said, I am so sorry. And regarding work specifically, and I had a lot of people offer to do things for me, or if we had meetings or projects coming up, like, if you want to step out of that, Jessi, just let me know. Or I think that was the most meaningful way to kind of bring it back around so that it wasn't awkward. But I appreciated when people just said, I want you to know I'm sorry. And even if you just say, I don't even know what to say, I think awkwardness and being comfortable being uncomfortable is important.
And I think too, going back to the actions speak louder than words, the intention is so good to say, what can I do to help? It is so good. I've said it myself, but that puts the burden on the person who is feeling this grief to answer that, to give you an answer to that. So instead of saying, what can I do to help, show up for them. If you see them struggling, like Jessi said, if it's you're their leader and you need to let them be excused from meeting, whatever that is, just show up for them with action.
And I think depending on your comfort level too, I had someone who just handed me a card. The card had people had gone in together and got me one of those float sessions so that I could relax whenever I needed it. And that was the sweetest thing. I mean, not everybody has the ability to give a gift or something like that, but I enjoyed it.
Little gestures go a long way. Mm-hmm.
Oh, could not agree more. Thank you, you two. One more question for you. If you are struggling, you lost somewhere going through the grieving process and you're back at work, any advice on how to address with your boss, or even should you go to HR if you need more time or need some additional accommodations in place so that you know that you can maximize your work potential but also take care of yourself?
I think the biggest thing is to take the time you need before going back to work and having those honest conversations with your boss, like Jessi said. And she mentioned too, you know, not everybody has the luxury of flexibility at their work, but at the end of the day, who's going to fight you when you say, my dad is dead, I cannot work today? And sometimes you need to tell them what you want and not ask for permission if it means self-preservation.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Megan and Jessi. I think we might need a circles group around this topic or something, because it seems like you two are not alone, and there's a lot of people who have some similar shared experiences. So I appreciate the candor. And I also want to say, I really appreciate the two of you, the coordination it took to pull this off. And I hope we see more two-person talks at future EWL Speaker Blitz events. So thank you for leading the charge on that. Okay, I don't know where the time went, but we are down to our last and final fifth talk of the day. And I want to use this time to introduce Mallory Davis. And for those of you who didn't know that we have a TV star in our midst in EWL, you're about to meet her. You are going to hear from the wildly creative, talented Mallory about her networking path and the serendipitous moments that led to an HGTV pilot show for her. And so Mallory, now's your turn. Share your screen and take it away whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you guys. I'm so happy to be here with you this afternoon. I'm Mallory Davis, and I'm currently the Business and Marketing Manager at Scale Up Milwaukee, which is an initiative of the Greater Milwaukee Committee. I've done a lot of things in my day, but having a pilot TV show on HGTV is definitely the most unexpected and also the most unique experience I've had. So for those who haven't heard or seen my Flippin' Friends, I'm going to play you just a brief sizzle reel so you can get a feel for the show.
I'm Jenny Radosevich. I run a DIY design company, and four of my closest friends and I all work together to flip houses in our hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Whoa! No, floor plans! We all bring a different skill set to the table. Mike I've known since high school. He's really plugged into all the real estate here.
If we're gonna do this, we go in low at 20.
Alan and I met through an old boyfriend, and now he's our project manager.
That's why they call it a drop ceiling.
Benji, I've known for years, and then Mallory is actually my next door neighbor, and we work together on the design.
Jenny's gonna take a nap.
We'll do all the work per usual. Per usual? Friends who flip together. Oh my God, this is amazing. Stick together.
So that aired about 3 years ago, which is crazy to think how quickly time flies by. But I met Jenny, who runs I Spy DIY. She's a local blogger in town. At a networking event with mutual friends, which I almost didn't attend, and obviously very thankful that I did. We hit it off almost right away, and we discovered our mutual love for home design, creating things, and hosting events. At that time, I was actually at Kohl's Corporate in product development and design, and I had been toying around with the idea of starting a freelance marketing and consulting type side gig. So it was really only a matter of time before Jenny and I collaborated on something together. So about a year after that first meeting, Jenny and I, along with three of our friends, started working on the show. We flipped a house in Walker's Point, and the rest is history. So the obvious learnings are really around new skills in home renovation, the truly grueling process of demolition and designing something from scratch, and I learned how to work a bulldozer. But more than that, I gained the confidence to work for myself. Being in a corporate environment for almost 7 years, I never thought that my creative outlet would be anything more than a hobby, and I didn't think I had the typical skills to be a part of the gig economy. Now I have a base of projects that I work on as a side hustle, and it gives me the creative outlet and the financial means outside of my 9 to 5. So why does any of this matter? Like I mentioned, being in a corporate environment, the majority of my early professional experience, I really thought that I was pigeonholing myself into that career trajectory. I was always networking outside of the industry more so for fun than anything else, and it's definitely paid off in more ways than one. So I'll leave you with a few things that I try to relate to anyone who's starting a new venture or on the fence about creating something outside of their 9 to 5. First, never pass up an opportunity to network, and do so without looking for an immediate return or reward. If I wouldn't have gone to that event, I probably wouldn't have met Jenny, and we wouldn't have had genuine conversations that led to having the show. The show definitely opened a lot of doors for me over the years, and it's why I'm sitting here with you guys. Next, your hobby doesn't have to just be a hobby. Even if someone's already doing what you do, your specific and unique talents and perspective are really what's going to set you apart for something different. And if nothing else, your creative outlet and hobby is an amazing way to develop soft skills and also meet a lot of new people that share similar interests with you. This picture is actually from the marketing agency that I used to work for. Before I even started working for them and before our Milwaukee office was opened, through my design experience and my broad network, I was able to help design this space. And finally, take a risk and be willing to grow and learn along the way. Growth is hard and it isn't going to be perfect the first time, but if you feel uneasy, a little reluctant, or even a bit scared, it's probably a good indicator that it's going to expand you into your next venture in life. Even though the pilot episode did not get picked up for a full season, it definitely taught me a lot of resiliency in my own work. So if anyone wants to learn more about the show, you want to hear about how I built my side hustle over the past few years, or even if you just want a little bit of design or marketing advice, I'd love to connect one-on-one. So you can reach me at that email address there, and I'm looking forward to it.
That was great. Way to end on a high note. We've had a couple of questions come in that I want to get to right away, Mallory. One of them was, I'm really inspired by networking now, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. What advice do you have for people that want to network virtually?
Yeah, so what's worked really well for me is reconnecting with people that used to be mentors, people I used to work with, things like that, something where you already have the relationship there, so it's not coming off as a favor or super forced. Another thing that's worked really well for me is reaching out to people that I've seen in, all the different virtual events or, TED Talks, speaker events, things like that, and reaching out to them directly and bringing out a piece of what they talked about, and really saying how that worked for me or how I'm applying that to my daily life. So it's a really nice conversation starter, and people like to have their egos stroked a little bit. So it's always flattering to get that kind of message and start that conversation.
That's awesome. Next question that came in, I have a lot of ideas and would love to have something on the side, but I also have a lot of fear and anxiety. Any recommendations on getting over that so that I can start a side hustle or gig right now? And I know there's a lot of other EWLers on today that have done the same thing as well. So please drop your best practices into the chat as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no right or wrong way. Like I said, it's not going to be perfect. And, with the, the previous speakers as well, putting yourself out there and being able to say, I'm not perfect. People don't realize the work that goes on behind a successful business or side hustle. So, it's all the work that you're doing behind the scenes that really pays off that no one knows about or knows that it's happening. And like I said, I've had to get over my own fears about trying new things and starting different things. So like I said, if it feels scary, it's probably a good indicator that you should push through it, because it's worth the payoff for sure.
Well, I've learned that if I'm not afraid of something, then I probably don't care enough about it. So we have a lot of requests for tours of your house. We might need to do another episode of that and see have you give us more design advice. But another question came in that I think is really relevant right now is, what was your number one low-hanging fruit home improvement that you did during quarantine? Because I think a lot of others are inspired to now tackle some home improvement projects as well.
Yeah, I'm sick of working from home because I've stared at every flaw in my apartment. So I've actually done a lot of the small things that you only notice when you're actually like staring at everything day after day, same thing. So a lot of like nicks and chips and things like that, and just doing all that little maintenance stuff has been nice, and just adding some different things. Like I've gone through 1 million candles over the past 6 months. So just the little things that, you know, spark a little bit of joy. So.
Oh, wonderful. Last question for you. What's next? You're clearly creative. You like to tackle new things. Any idea what's on the horizon?
I don't. You know, I've always been the type of person that reacts to opportunities that have come, not necessarily, you know, taking the initiative to do it, because a lot of times I'm the one that needs to react to an idea, not necessarily create it. So hopefully that opportunity is coming soon, and just keep growing.
Oh, well, to echo what Heather just said, I think you spark joy for many of us. So thank you for sharing that. That brings us to the conclusion. Almost, we have some wrap-up comments, but that brings us to the conclusion of everyone's talks. And please give just a virtual round of applause to all of our speakers who were just incredible today. And it took a lot of courage from all of them to share all of these different topics with you. So I applaud all of you guys. And I also applaud our community in EWL that listened and commented. I think that is the most awesome part of this group, and just how supportive it is and how happy it makes me to be part of it. And so now I'm going to turn it back over to my awesome co-host Amy to walk us through some upcoming events and a few other announcements.
Thanks so much, Kelsey. Ladies, what an incredible program. Thank you again, Kaitlin, Ebony, Betsy, Megan, Jessi, and Mallory for sharing your stories and embracing the power of vulnerability. So before we leave, we have just a couple quick announcements. So September 2nd, EWL Explores Wine and Cheese Pairing. September 16th, we have EWL Info Session. On the 24th, we have Tempo Real Talks, White Fragility, covering Chapter 4. And September 30th, we have our one-on-one mentoring kickoff. All of these sound like incredible events, and we really encourage you to register. I want to thank the programming committee one more time for all of their hard work to make this event a reality. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact any of us. We'd be happy to help. Thank you again for attending our 3rd annual virtual speaker blitz, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.